Yeah.
I'll probably
Si je veux te marier, je te donne.
if everyone has to get the presentation, themselves.
You think he will join? No? No. I try to work this.
It's a hard time. Yeah. No more coffee. I think I heard him say that. Oh, yeah. You never. Better bring two out.
Starting to understand your software nativity. Starting to understand your software nativity.
It'll make sense when I present the very
Starbucks, Joe.
Could you imagine?
Starbucks name for the site. It's so weird. I want the smaller one.
Oh, you want to grab it?
Well, it also has like
They always say that.
Yes,
I really love hearing know what they like about French cuisine. That's like American version. British street
the joke
yeah, back home.
Really? Okay, I thought it was your
I have really told too much, but the Saurians, they have crazy accents. It's really hard.
It's really jumbled up.
It's the same word. Just say
I feel like it's similar because their accent is almost more South American.
It's mainly several Spanish.
Well, that's actually, that's
I know the
outside of,
45.
outside of.
Below 5.
Yeah, the roll.
South speaks fast. It's not.
Just accents.
The ones that you mentioned, they're totally separate.
Yeah,
That's fine.
That's fine.
You must speak.
Similar. I don't speak it, but maybe they'll understand me.
I know something.
Okay, so we're just around 11:30, so we will start again. I'd like to introduce Xavier to come up and give his keynote presentation on recap of season 1 towards season 2.
Okay, thank you, Craig. And thank you mainly for organizing this workshop. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. Very, very kind of you, and I appreciate very much, and appreciate especially to have been able to make it today, because that last week we are not very comfortable. Okay, so my talk today will be about historical survey of what happened during the first season of the Backscatter Working Group, and give a few ideas about what could be the next stage of it. My paper I co-authored with Geoffroy. As you may know, we were both the chair people of the previous working group. And Geoffroy did not take the chance we offered him to be online for this presentation, so but for it. Okay, so I start with a few fundamentals about backscatter. Just one slide. I won't go into the traditional course about physical backscatter, which may be useful by it. But well, what's the backscatter? Backscatter is a return of acoustic energy from wanted or unwanted targets. In our case, we are mainly, maybe exclusively, not really, interested in sediments. So backscatter depends on the sediment properties, depending if it is sediment on the seafloor or suspended in water. For the seafloor, it depends on the impedance contrast between the water and the substrate. It depends on the roughness of the interface, and it depends to some point on the structure of the sediment in the superficial layers. And for the in-water suspended sediment, backscatter is linked to the nature of the mineral, to the geometry, meaning their size, their shape, and their concentration. This backscatter quantity, it depends on angle, especially for the seafloor. It depends on frequency. That's a very important and interesting point. And it's a very fluctuating quantity to measure. So it has to be processed statistically. Meaning that you cannot do with one value of backscatter. You always have to consider it as a function of angle, as a function of frequency, as a function of both, as a function of time. So this is something that needs a particular approach. For the community using Backscatter that we represent here today, Backscatter is not interesting by itself. You know, knowing that sand will give you minus 23 dB, okay, that's fine, but what does it give you in terms of understanding of the environment? So it's only a proxy for most users to get access to the nature of the seafloor, for instance, and to some of its properties, some of them. It's not for a geoscientist, Backscatter may be a bit disappointing in certain ways. And if you're interested in the in-water suspended sediment, it can take you to some quantification of the suspended matter. We are mainly speaking about the multi-beam technology, the Backscatter Working Group, mainly but not only, because they are the most popular tools today for seafloor mapping. They are very efficient, very reliable systems today. They were initially designed for bathymetry measurements, for making seafloor maps, and Backscatter appeared progressively as a byproduct of the bathymetry measurements. And today, its functionality in its own right, but it is something still more recent and maybe not yet as well accepted as bathymetry functionality. And the role of multi-beam echo sonders has evolved since, and they are more and more usable and used for in-water measurements. And all these backscatter measurements, with, as I said, are quite complicated, physically speaking, quite complicated phenomena. They imply, and it's a very important thing, they imply that the sensor is calibrated. This may sound obvious for any physical measurement of any kind. When you use a sensor, the reflex is to calibrate it. With multi-beam echo sonders for backscatter, it looks like the reflex is not so well implemented today in people's way. So we have to insist on this. Mark, you can start ticking the calibration. Okay, how did it all begin? Craig already mentioned this conference, GEOAM conference in Rome, during which there was a one-day workshop organized by QPS, by the way, about seafloor backscatter. And the purpose of this backscatter workshop, I forget it. This is all, and the rest of the story is under the umbrella of the GEOAM community. The discussions and the presentations that were given, it was about synthesizing the user needs and expectations, discuss about the backscatter models and their interpretation, discuss about the quality and the scale of the data that we use for backscatter analysis, and about the possibility of reliably calibrating the multi-beam systems. The clearest result of the workshop was that things were not very clear. And the main expectation from the audience, from the attendees, was a strong need for clarification of everything, of the physics, of the instruments, and of the protocols of measurement and processing, clarification and defining guidelines for users. And so this was during the workshop itself, at the end of it, the decision of launching this working group, which appeared very soon as a cat herding enterprise. You talked about the navel gazing concept. We have a second concept, we have the cat herding. Interesting, huh? And in the wake of it, we defined very soon the mandates of the group, built a chair group, and so on. So this was the historical home meeting. The expectations that were defined then they comprised the fundamentals of backscatter, help users to understand and provide them simple models of the physical processes, and to build possibly usable links between the measurement and the sediment properties, which is once again the goal. Again, measuring BS for itself is a bit sterile. What was felt as being desirable at that time was having sonar sensors that should be multi-angle. Multi-beam gives this functionality, and multi-frequency. At the time, it was not yet so clear. It's much more common today, but this is something we will have to discuss more. Also, it was expected that the current systems, the available systems, they should provide specialized backscatter measurement functionalities, and that the calibration of these sensors be better provided, and if not provided by the constructor, that methods were defined for the users in order to complete this. The expectations in terms of processing was the emergence of standardized methodologies and numerical tools for the measurements, and as well for the post-processing. For the first point, this is normally included inside the eco-standards themselves. The second one, the situation is different. Normally, people use third-party softwares coming from various software developers, and the consistency of the results of these various providers was indeed the question. It still works. So all these great issues, large issues, they are still now valid at some point. It doesn't mean that we don't progress at all, but the main ideas, they are still there. So the initial mandate of the working group, it was finally, see, 10 years later, it was very practical. We had no ambition of a breakthrough in the scientific domain or in the technological domain. No, we first wanted to clarify and recommend to users for their practical applications, how to use best the existent. Because it was considered that a lot had been done already, but insufficiently understood and interiorized by the users. So the main goals were to synthesize the expectations of the users, to provide them guidelines for ANSI acquisition and first level processing, to design calibration protocols, and to familiar.
You mentioned 4 times.
Okay. And to make people aware of the need for calibration and to familiarize them with the protocols. To improve the available software tools, and this went by a comparison of the various available software suites, and to build a database of field data, which was a very interesting and ambitious goal. And I must say to our shame that we did absolutely nothing of it. Okay. The chronological timeline, it all started in Rome, as I said, and 2 years later, we released this Backscatter Working Group guidelines and recommendations document. Following this effort, we went to writing a series of scientific papers. And in 2018, we had this special issue of the Marine Geophysical Research. The project of comparison between the processing software started the same year. It went on for 2 or 3 years, say. Then the same year, we had the start of this New Zealand-led project, mainly about in-water backscatter measurements at sea. We had in 2020 a questionnaire by Giacomo about the variability studies of the backscatter. At the end of 2020, the start of a particular project of acquisition of reference data, backscatter in food. And here we are in Halifax, with the hope of starting a new chapter of the work. So the step 1 was brilliantly conducted. I must say it, Craig will agree. So the outline of the document was as follows. We had one coordinator for each one of the chapter or topics, and you see here the smiles of the usual suspects. The photos are at the time of publication, so it's a bit scary to see them today. Okay. So there was one chapter about the backscatter fundamentals led by Tom. The users' need were coordinated by Vanessa. Craig, you were on the backscatter measurement principles, part of it. And Glenn Wise from NOAA, he made a very nice job on the best practice guide for the acquisition of C. Backscatter processing was a thick chapter, Alex, and you coordinated this one. And Geoffroy and myself, we wrote the blah blah production. Would be good. And last but not least, Erin Efron from the QPS at that time, she did a tremendous job for all the logistics of the document, which was indeed a very big thing and a heavy load of work. And we did it exactly in 2 years. So we could deliver it at the GeoApp conference in Salvador de Bahia. And at the very day of the working group meeting in Bahia, the day before we were still printing the reports in this Brazilian printing shop. Yeah. But we are in time. The document is a free access. This may be one of our slide failures. We never managed to have it actually published officially. We discussed it again and again for long, and we never arrived to any solution. So finally, it was published under the hat of GeoApp. It is free access on the internet, but that's it. We did not want further for the referencing of the document. I had a quick search in scientific publications citing the guideline report, and I find the 145 on them, which is okay. Okay, then 3 years later, this was a big bulk of work as well. We could have this special issue, seafloor backscatter from swarf echo sounders, from technological development to novel applications. We could have it published in the Marine Geophysical Research. It was partly based on the guidelines. In a way, we wanted to compensate for the lack of actual official publication of the guideline document, but as well it included a number of original research works in the field of backscatter. That's a total of 20 papers, 67 contributors, the usual associated editors. And I have searched for all the stations of the various papers, and that's a total of more than 600, which begins to come. In 2018, we defined a series of thematic actions. The idea was that subgroups of the working group would appear and start research or development works independently. And so the list of it is here. It was about data acquisition, for instance. One thing identified was a multi-frequency measurement and processing. Beverly go to another slide. An example of what was going on at that time in terms of multi-frequency measurement. This is ephemeral measurements using a single beam echo samples mounted on a mobile device. So the idea is to have several transducers at different frequencies able to scan versus angle the seafloor at a given point, and this resulted last year in a paper in the JSA showing the results of this. So the dependence of the backscatter level as a function of frequency for series of 4 areas around Brest. I guess Vida will talk more about this in the afternoon. One group was in charge of the processing software comparison. This group was active for how long? 2-3 years, Alex?
Something like this, yeah.
The idea was comparative studies of a number of small number, 4 of them, of software suites. The principle was to compare the BS data level obtained at different stages of the processing, starting from obviously the same data set. And as expected, significant differences were found between the various software, and they appeared actually quite early in the processing flows.
You could not have them access too far in the processing flow because it's not like the software. It's not like the software can extract the data at several stages. So we were really limited in what we could extract. It was really just at the very beginning, but already right there was like massive differences found. So we didn't even have to dig in the rest of the processing because everything was already there.
The first step was a very huge difference. In the first step of the processing, we observed huge difference between them.
Yes.
Simply in the step of how do you get one value from snippets? That's
Exactly.
basically it.
Exactly.
They all start with snippets, but then they all reduce it to one value, and they all do it in different ways.
So obviously there was some issues in the very fundamental operations conducted by this software. And so the idea that emerged from this was that there was a need to standardize these first level operations and more than that, maybe to write and to make available some code modules that could be used by users. And this will be, I guess, more explained more details by Mike. Okay, another group was in charge of the backscatter variability study, the framework of environment monitoring. Another one about certainty, accuracy, and resolution. I think an important result of this was Mashku PhD works. And the group was in charge of the library, of the still-to-come library of documented C4 responses. Apart from these subgroups that were officially intronized by the main working group, a number of spin-off projects emerged as well. I mentioned here three of them. The first one, okay. The broadband acoustic characterization of free gases in ocean water, which was led by New Zealand, but it implied also Australia, the United States with the UNH, France as well, maybe Germany also, not sure. Leona was part of it, I'm not sure. And the idea was multi-frequency, multi-sensor, clearly, gas bubble imaging. It was focused over one major hydrothermal vent in the New Zealand area, which was surveyed by a number of sensors, multi-beam, a single beam, tilted single beams, and so on. There was also trials with artificial bubble plumes created on the seafloor, and so on. A very rich harvest of data that has been, I think, widely exploited since then. There was PhDs going on about this data. So one project which was not commanded directly by the working group, but which is obviously a byproduct of the working group works, and especially the leaders of this project were all top guns of the original team of the working group. Okay, the backscatter in flume project, that's a more recent thing. The goal of it that emerged in 2020 was to measure reference sediment responses under controlled environment. The idea is that all the data that are available today, they are always taken at sea, which is as representative as possible of the reality, but with always a very difficult point, that is the one to you never know exactly what was the target. Here, the idea here is to create artificial, perfect targets and to measure them in very well-controlled conditions. So it's not an easy thing because you need facilities that are adapted to this. And so the idea here was to use one of these big hydrodynamic flumes existing in the Netherlands, a huge thing, 300 meters long and 10 meters deep. And a feasibility test was conducted in 2020 with a series of various frequency single beams and a multi-beam. And the measurement went both on the floor of the flume and on sediment plumes that were spread from the surface. And we put together a number of very interesting data that are obviously far too long to present today. So let's go. The last point was the emergence of a methodology for cross-calibrating the echo sounders using reference areas. So this is from a presentation to explain them how cross-calibration works. We started from an area close to Brest, which was qualified, characterized using the tilted single beam calibrated systems. and then a multi-beam system from another partner, namely Belgica from Belgium, surveyed the same area and calibrated the multi-beam here on the data of this area, then surveyed the same area in Belgium, which was calibrated in turn, which made possible for another ship to cross-calibrate against it and so on. That's the idea. Then the theory, what we have not done is to close the loop and to make sure that at the end of the day, we have not propagated too much errors together as propagated the calibration. And similar methodology is being studied and applied in the United States today. So that's much of it for the subgroups and the spin-off. A word about how the first working group did function. And very modestly, I call it a recipe for success, actually. Recipe for successful cat herding. You have to stay modest. Actually, it was quite an unusual structure because it was not a network, it was more than that, but it was not really a project in the sense that we imagine it with all the structuration and the budgets and so on. It was something intermediate. The budget point is a very interesting one. It means that formally, it did not imply a euro or a dollar or whatever of budget. Actually, the people's work was supported by good-willing employers. That's the condition for this to work. But we did not have to justify and ask for projects. So we could start the working group the very day we launched it. This is very comfortable as soon as you don't really need money for ambitious, but it was the case. And the good thing is that all the participants could feel constructive interaction with their own research work. Was the idea, and this was because we defined as clearly as possible common objective with general interest with your interest. So there was not so much of this, and especially once again because there was no money. This is miserable, but that's the truth. Okay. A word about the context of the GEWAB framework. I feel this was a very important point because first we had this users community. They have their needs, their objectives, their expectations, and this gives the impetus to the working group, which is finally working more in the technology side of it. The regular conferences, that's a strong point as well. Why could we finalize this guideline document in exactly 2 years? It was because we had the deadline of the conference in El Salvador. So it's very good that we have this regular meeting every year. That's excellent. We used also the facilities of the the GeoWeb community for communication and so on. So, well, this is maybe something to consider for the next stage of the working group. Should it remain completely a GeoWeb thing or not? But I don't want to answer this question, but what I can say is that for the first season of the working group, it was a very positive thing. Okay, and now I will mention a series of pending issues and maybe defining, giving elements to define the roadmap for the next stage. The first question that was asked by Alex sooner, should the working group address the water column issues? This has been a recurrent debate during the life of the first working group, and actually the answer emerged by itself. Obviously, the water column has to be part of it, especially considering suspended sediments. That's the key point. Maybe we could be reluctant for the biology part of it. There are already communities working on the fish with acoustics, the biomass estimation, and so on. They have their own technological working groups and so on. We don't want to step on their toes, especially, and they have done a tremendous job actually, that we exploit as well. So maybe there will be a frontier to define with them, but I think that clearly the answer here is yes, we should address the water column backscatter measurements. What are today the new expectations and applications of the community? How did the expectations change over these 10 years? We know, for instance, that for mineral resources, everything about deep water, deep sea mining, for instance, the hot topic of polymetallic nodules detection and in shallow water, the dredging issues. This is more and more pregnant in today's expectations. Environmental monitoring, very wide topics. An important point that should be discussed as well is which seafloor information do you users expect from the backscatter? That's a key point actually. Acoustic backscatter may provide you number of information, properties about the seafloor. Are they enough? Are they relevant? Having a group thinking about this should be useful. Over the 10 years, how did the users' practice change? The users, they include state agencies, including the hydrographic services, industry, the academic teams. All these people, they are using more and more backscatter measurements at sea, meaning that some methodology have emerged in this respect. Some of hydrographic services, for instance, have started to acquire systematically backscatter as a complement to the topography. How are they doing? What methodologies, what protocols did they define? How well do they calibrate their sensor, calibrate it. And can we expect an emergence of standardized protocols? Such protocols do exist for hydrography in the field of bathymetry. It should be really useful that similar things do appear for Backscatter. Actually, we contacted IHO at the beginning of the working group, asking them whether they could be part of it. At that time, they were not so enthusiastic about doing anything about it. While they admitted that this could be of interest, but 10 years after, maybe that's a good moment, considering that indeed the expectations are. And yes, I want to mention that a survey has been launched by Vincent here and colleagues about today's expectations in order to define the research priorities in Backscatter for the upcoming years. And Vincent will present us this today. Okay, regarding the sonar sensors, what could be expected in the future regarding calibration? A lot has been done already for defining methods and protocols. Maybe the constructors have not been proactive enough in this respect. Maybe they could do more. They could imagine to sell us users already calibrated systems from the factory, or they could at least provide us with tools and methods so that their systems can be efficiently calibrated by us users. So much is expected from constructors. I think Mike will tell us about this. Calibration of deep water systems. For now, we are nowhere. We are only about systems above 30 kilohertz, rather 100 kilohertz. Could it be desirable to imagine new systems that should be specialized in backscatter measurements, including new sonar functionalities? What could be the best frequency range? How useful is multi-frequency actually? Okay, that's data kindly provided by Mark. That's brand new, from last week or yesterday. So on the same area, he surveyed that the sand area with dunes with the new Belgica. Basically, the multi-beam was 2040, so 300 kilohertz, and I suggested him to turn on the EM304, that is a 30 kilohertz system, normally not designed for working in these 50-meter shallow water areas, and that the average response of the two frequencies, the 30 kilohertz, was not calibrated. That's a big, but the interesting thing is the dynamics of the difference between the two frequencies along the line. So this to say that using very different frequencies like this one, this could be a very interesting option for going further in the multi-frequency analysis. Okay. Yes, the capability of measuring together seafloor and in water. The issues of angle and range resolution. Are we working at the good scale? Meaning we are always or usually using hydrography multi-beam systems with a very, very good resolution capability. Is it really useful for backscatter mapping? Yes and no. This will be a good topic to debate the upcoming days. Technologically, yes, it is better to have this. Scientifically speaking, for end users, is it so useful? So there is a trade-off to find between the hydrographic constraints that command today the characteristics of the multi-beam and the actual needs of the users. The question behind is that the hydrography systems are quite expensive. And you could imagine that cheaper systems could do a useful job as well with degraded performance. And the good thing also should be to go back to the analysis of the performance of existing multi-beam systems. And why not going to benchmarks with existing systems? This happened in the framework of this shallow survey conference that happened every 4 years or something like that. Maybe it could be the good opportunity with the new Backscatter Working Group to go to something like that. Okay, and to organize so the acquisition of data at sea with various systems, and to organize workshops to process and interpret and discuss about the data. Okay, this was it. Regarding the method and the software. Key point, obviously, is equals under calibration and everything about acquisition. Again, what is presumably needed today, more than defining new methods and new protocols, is to disseminate this bulk of knowledge among users. And this will go, I'm convinced, and I already told it, but through the help of the constructors and the institution. Once you see that NOAA or NIWA or whoever acquires backscatter under standardized protocols with calibration applied, this is indeed a very strong motivation for everyone. For data processing, maybe we should need a new state of the art compared to what Alex made 10 years ago. About all the stages of the post-processing flows. And again, maybe we should go back to this software suite comparison. We understood from the first round of it that it was not so easy to conduct for a number of reasons that are not all technical. But we should do the same as we could do with the hardware systems, going to comparisons, benchmarks, and workshops. Also, the idea of defining a library of standardized software modules to be considered. And finally, what I call the documentation. Slight return to the guideline and recommendation book. We should evaluate today how good and useful is it, how good, and there is no doubt it is good, but maybe it could be better. That's my point. Should it be updated? Yes, I think the answer is the question. For instance, there is nothing about the in-water measurements. So obviously something has to be done. The technology has progressed for the hardware, for the software. There are some new modeling tanks and new modeling tools that are available today. This is to consider as well. Okay, and again, this idea of a library of backscatter reference data, what is available today, it should be good to summarize this and start finally to build something about it. A database which should include both the ANSI logged data under an operational context, but also new data from controlled environments similar to the backscatter inflow that I mentioned. Okay, that's pretty much it. I've been far too long, I'm sorry. As a conclusion, since the launching of the working group, significant progress has happened in the world of backscatter measurement. It has progressed from a scientific topic, quite confidential, to more or less operational applications. The stakeholders are more and more aware of the interest of this, and today backscatter can be considered as a decision-making tool. In this context, we can modestly affirm that we have been an important actor in this progress. Why? Because we have gathered different communities from science and users, from the engineering world, from the industry, and we defined our objective. We fulfilled some of them, and honestly, not all of them, sorry. But that's life. So new expectations today, new topics. It is a matter for our discussions going on now. And so the start for a new backscatter working group, new objective, new method, and new cats to collaborate. That's it.
Xavier, really great overview there. Lots of things I think we can talk about over the next 2.5 days. We could probably take some initial questions or comments for Xavier before we break for lunch. If anybody has anything immediately to raise or ask. Anybody online? Sure, we'll revisit a lot of the points that Xavier's raised, particularly like your forward look at where the gaps are and how things have changed since Backscatter Bible was generated. So I think there's going to be lots of discussion for the breakout sessions tomorrow. We're right on 12:30 local time, so we can break now and have lunch. We've got an hour and 1.5 hours for lunch break. For those of you online, you can rejoin. It will be 2 o'clock local time here in Halifax if you want to rejoin us. And for those of you on site, I think lunch has arrived, so we can break and eat, and we'll reconvene at 2 o'clock.
correct.